Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. We broadcast 2 hours a day, 5 days a week on GCNlive.com. You can hear us on YouTube, too. YouTube, the Ron Gibson channel, and also RBN, Republic Broadcasting Network. And let's see, if you'd like to call us, we'll pay for the call, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line is up and running via Global Star. That number is 712-770-9418, 712-770-9418. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning?
Well, I'm a little leaner. I'm a little lighter in weight. Most of us in the United States are losing weight because we can't buy the things that we'd like to eat, and so we're all, well, at least our family is rationing what we're eating because we're not wasting a single thing. So, if we were going to make an extra, let's say we were going to have a hamburger. I'm trying to remember those days. That was a long time ago, hamburgers. But if we were going to make one, we might make one extra one in case someone wanted an extra one. Not anymore. Not anymore. That's what it's like. How's it in Australia? Are you guys seeing the same thing?
Well, it's like this. We have a certain amount of food, and I know approximately how long that food's going to last. We were always pretty frugal in our eating habits, and so we're just more or less carrying on as normal with our normal frugal eating habits. But what I did do was the last couple of paychecks, I basically spent a big fat wad of it on food. And, it wasn't easy because the food was also more expensive. But I basically went in and stocked up on all the staples, basically, that I could afford, and just about almost everything else went on the back burner, except that I have another fortnightly routine, and that is that I go to a particular garden nursery that's in the middle of town and near the supermarket, and I buy plants, or I buy seeds, or I buy some trees. And so I kept up that routine, but other than that, pretty well everything got spent on stocking up on food. And now I think we would have enough food to last us, between, I think, 4 and 6 months. The last couple of months would be pretty lean. We would be eating, rice and beans. But, other than that, that's what I did for the last couple of checks. And, I can see this is not going to get better anytime soon. I noticed on the news that they were saying, oh, yes, we're opening the economy back up now and it's all going to be good and everybody's going to go back to work, blah, 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 blah. That's not going to be like that because a lot of businesses have been economically crippled, and a lot of businesses, I think, have been permanently economically crippled. And you can't just switch a business like that back on because, what's happened to the staff? Have they gotten other jobs? Have they moved away? Have they gotten sick? Are they just not interested in working anymore and happy to live on unemployment checks in parts of the world where, there's no compulsion really to go out and find work, which is some areas of the world, and at some times as well, there's no compulsion to go back to work, And people might be willing to, in other parts of the world like the US where the unemployment checks only last for 6 months or whatever, people might be happy just to sit on the unemployment for 6 months. And that's going to be a real hindrance to businesses just opening up again. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Oh, it absolutely does make sense, and I agree with all of your points. I mentioned this week that there was a company that sold tires, fixed cars in a little hamlet 20 miles down the road. And the mayor had this mayor, and she decided that, we need to have people slow down. 26 miles an hour or above, we're going to give them tickets in town. And town is like a mile long at the most. Maybe it's even half a mile long. And there's this big hill that you come down as you approach the town, and the speed limit goes from 55 to 35. And it wasn't posted really well. And actually where the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit started was subject to interpretation. So people would come down with, like me, with trucks and trailers and heavy loads, and we'd slow down. And it was a bumpy road, and your taillights could be knocked out, but, the filaments, the old-style incandescent lights on the trailers could be broken from all these bumps, and you'd get a ticket for a taillight, or 26 miles an hour on a 25, or 36 miles an hour in a 35. And so they had this cop with a radar gun. He was part-time, and his job was to, ensnare everybody he could. Well, people stopped going there. And this was not the corona panic. This was just a cop with a radar gun hiding behind, other cars, or parking in a parking lot where there are other cars, like at a funeral home, and giving people tickets. So people avoided town. They went around the town because they knew if they made the slightest mistake, they were going to get a ticket and get hauled into court and so forth. So people decided that they weren't going to go to that town. And people at the bank would say, Vincent, we haven't seen you in a while. I go, yeah, it's because you got that guy with that radar gun. And so I talked to the owner of that business, that auto repair business and tire repair business, and he said he lost a lot of his customers, most of them, and they're not coming back. He said they're not coming back because they already found another alternative. So when the speed trap was set up, people said they weren't going there. They found another place to go for their automotive repairs, their automotive inspections, state-required inspections, and tire repairs. So they're not coming back. So what you said is absolutely correct. So when we find an alternative, we're not going to switch back again. And that's just human nature. So that's why, Sears isn't coming back, because its customers found that they could get better for less other places. So why spend more at Sears? So Sears isn't coming back either. So you're absolutely right. And there's no fixing this. There's no short-term fix. You can't take over 100 years of earning a good reputation and doing the right thing and then squander it, as Sears did, and then expect your customers are going to come running back. You can't do that. And that's where we are today. Companies have squandered their goodwill. They've squandered their names in favor of enormous payouts for the executives of the company. They're making millions and millions of dollars, and they put their pants on the same way everybody else does. Is the CEO of Disney worth $81 million a year? Really? Is he? So when you look at that, it's not coming back. And who in their right mind would go to a mall? If they switched off the coronavirus tomorrow, who would say, let's go to the mall? Who would do that? So the mall anchors have and are still going under. So if the ends of a shopping mall, like Sears at one end and J.C. Penney at the other, or Sears at one end and Kohl's at the other, or something like that. And then in between you have all these little boutique shops. If the anchors of the malls go under, who is going to the mall? Nobody.
Nobody.
So, right.
Nobody.
So
and the thing
it's
is,
not fixable.
It's not just businesses. It's governments too. You know, people have. I believe, just from what I do, I look at the comment section in YouTube videos, and I look at the comment section on Facebook posts. And one thing I notice is that if there is somebody who comes up on YouTube or on Facebook and says, yeah, I reckon the government are great people. I think you ought to do everything that the government says. And wow, aren't the cops great and wonderful and all the rest of it? And you know what? I couldn't comment on air about 90% of the comments because they involve foul language directed at the blue team and directed at the municipality and directed at the state government and the federal government and our prime minister in this country, ScoMo, or as he's otherwise known, Scummo, that's Scott Morrison. And you know what he decided to do over the weekend, Vincent? I'll tell you what he decided.
Let's hear it.
This will absolutely floor you. He said that, the coronavirus is still kind of an issue, but we're going to open all the schools on Tuesday and Wednesday when the school holidays finish. And it's up to schools to decide whether they want to open or not, but we're going to give them permission to open. And as soon as I heard that, I thought to myself, my gosh, this is, this is about the most stupid thing. I know I wrote a number of emails, and I know I used that word stupid a lot in the emails. And it's true. This whole partial lockdown thing is a complete farce. These guys could not organise a party in a pub. They really couldn't. That's a very, very polite way of saying it, you know. We have another saying in Australia here that, about being able to organise social events in houses of ill repute. That means you couldn't fight your way out of a paper bag. And that is Scott Morrison. He's completely clueless. And, this coronavirus is a real virus that is killing people worldwide. But the thing that's more dangerous is the government response to it. And in this country, what they're doing is they're saying, yeah, we're going to, quarantine everyone and lock everybody down and all the rest of it. But not everybody. So, yeah, we're going to... Oh, sorry, what was that?
Well, we're going into a break. We'll be right back. The elites still want to travel. So it's everybody but them, right? We'll be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Guineith, I'm reading an article on the internet right now that says more than 250,000, let me say it a different way, more than 250,000 stores have temporarily closed since March. That's 250,000 stores temporarily closing since last month because of the coronavirus. And there are some big names in stores. They are Macy's, Gap, and Kohl's, Kohls, apostrophe S. And they may not come back. We don't know. But this is a huge retail catastrophic crisis. And this is where we are today. So when we talk about, partial shutdown, we talk about we're going to close the economy, we're going to close, yet no, we're going to open. These mixed messages are very hard for people to understand because it's impossible to understand them. When the government says we're going to have 1 million tests and then they deliver 700 tests, when the government says we only have 15 infected cases and we're working on it and trust us, and then we find out 6 weeks later it's almost 600,000 cases, positive infected people. It's really hard to trust the government. And then we hear that the check, there'll be a $1,200 check coming to everybody. And then it's soon, and it's next week, and it's 2 weeks, and it's 3 weeks. And now it's delayed because the president says he wants his signature to be on those checks. You know, when you get messages like that, it's really hard to trust these guys. Now, I would say that I would have a better feeling with Donald Trump at the control tower rather than Jumpin' Joe the plagiarist Biden. I really feel that way. But he's getting a lot of bad advice. And I think he's listening to the last guy that talked to him, the last lobbyist that talked to him. And then I read that he's getting over 100 people together to advise him on what their feeling is about reopening the country for business. And a lot of them happen to be from the large banking institutions within the United States, whose main interest is money. It is not about lives. And then there are people who represent ball teams, you know, guys that chase balls around a field. And they are going to be involved in making their opinions known to the president. Really, is going to a ball game that important? Well, it is if you're a city or a county government and you are the proprietor of a ball stadium. That would be important, you know, for revenue, you know, for overcharging people for beer and pretzels and whatever else, hot dogs and whatever else they sell there, and for tickets. But is it important in the scheme of things? No, not really. Not really. So here we have the news with conflicting images, conflicting messages. It's impossible to figure out what's right because it keeps changing. It keeps changing from moment to moment. And it seems to me that the best choice, if you want to save lives, is a lockdown, a complete lockdown. And the reason I can say that with some authority is because there's one place on the planet that does not have the coronavirus. And that's a little village in Spain. And I don't remember the name of the village, but it's a town in Spain. And it has a stone wall around it. And the stone wall is very old, hundreds of years old at least. So it's an old village overlooking a valley. And there are 5 holes in the wall to allow people to enter and exit this village. When I say holes, passageways for vehicles. 4 of them have been shut down. So now there's only one way in and one way out. And the mayor of the town was proactive. He shut down everything, all traffic. And if you're coming in, your vehicle will be disinfected with bleach, or you're not coming in. And you know what? They don't have the coronavirus, the only place on the planet that I know of. Because even in South America, even in remote villages that have never seen visitors, somehow they've got it. But this one mayor in Spain did the right thing. And my hat's off to that mayor. We'll be right back. Guineith, I'd love to hear your comments when we come back. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. Guineith, I mentioned a couple things that iconic stores have shut down temporarily, and they may not come back at all. And we've had 250,000 stores temporarily closed since last month in the United States. And research says that about 15,000 stores will permanently close this year, which is in concert with what you and I have been saying. And I mentioned that there's a town in Spain, a little village and they do not have the coronavirus because they locked down, and they were proactive about it from early in the game as compared to every other country that didn't really seem to pay attention. Do you have any comments on any of those things that I mentioned?
Okay, I'll bet they built those walls during the bubonic plague.
Right,
if you went back
right.
in the history of it. I'm guessing that they found that that was a very good way to stop the plague from getting into their town, and it still works. Unfortunately, that only works in quite small populations. It doesn't work in large metropolises because there's just no way of completely controlling everybody's movements, and all it takes is for one person to sneak in to the metropolis, and the whole town's gone, the whole city's gone. You know what I mean? If that person is infected, all it takes is one person to get in there. So it would be absolutely lovely if everybody could still live in walled towns like this particular little village in Spain. But people don't want to live like that. They want to live in large towns, large cities, or even small country towns. They don't want to live in isolated places. And truth be told, I think that lockdowns are a fantastic idea, but I think that at the moment they're being selectively imposed, and that they are being used as an excuse for tyranny. In other words, you get police following people around, and as soon as they think that they're walking a little bit too close to each other, they rush up to them and book them. So now they're not even having to use their police cars to go and snipe people and give them tickets. They just have to follow them around. It's just absolutely disgusting, and is doing nothing to, encourage people's faith that the blue team is there to help them. The blue team are on a power kick, and they think that they've got the power, they've got the guns. In many areas, like Australia, where the ordinary people don't have guns, the blue team thinks that there's nothing that the ordinary people can do against them. But they have no idea what's coming. They haven't studied epidemiology, virology, the history of epidemics, and anyone who's studied that knows that what follows on the heels, close on the heels of just about every epidemic, is massive social breakdown. And I'm not encouraging people to do this, okay? I'm just saying this is what happens in history. People get to sharpen their pitchforks in history shortly after epidemics, especially if they feel that they have been badly treated by the local lord during that epidemic. So if they're starving and disease-ridden, and they look across at the big house or the manor or the palace, and they can see that everybody's fat and happy, they're not going to take that very well. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Absolutely. It absolutely makes sense. And I can tell you around our neck of the woods here, we live in a very poor area. There's nothing here. There's no sidewalks. There are no traffic lights. Now, we do have a couple stop signs, but they're few and far between. We hardly have signs on the road that match. So at one end of the road, it might have one name of the road, and at the other end, a couple miles longer down the road, it have a different name. So it's really poor here. And
yeah.
Well, I think what happens is when someone runs into one of those poles that has the name of a road, and a street A street has curbs. A road does not. And I think when somebody runs into one of those poles that has the name of a street or, a road on it, and it gets damaged, the county says, "Oh, what was the name of that road? I think it was. I know what it was," and they guess, and then they get a new sign. And
oh boy!
even the name of the little town that we're close to has 3 names because no one can get it right, and officially it has 3 different names. They sound similar, and I've wondered, what's wrong with you guys? How come you don't know the name of the town? It's because it has 3 names, and it depends on when they learned what the name of the town was. That's what they call it. So, but I believe you're absolutely right. Even though we have a lot of poverty here, I believe that people are going to rise up, and they're going to get their pitchforks out, they're going to get their shotguns out, they're going to get their 30-30s out, and they're going to start aiming them. Because I hear the gunfire now. Literally, I hear gunshots a lot. And what people are doing is they're literally shooting at targets.
Practicing.
They're practicing. They're getting ready for, the invasion. They literally, I'm not exaggerating, class. And I was talking to a gal in Florida. And, I think she's in her 50s, maybe a little bit older than that. And she was saying, I was, killing some cans. Meaning she was shooting at tin cans or soup cans or something like that in her yard. She's getting ready. Now, she said she hadn't done this in a long, long time. And when I'm thinking maybe 30 years, she hasn't, shot her rifle. Now she's shooting at cans, just to get ready, get back in shape. This is, and this is in Florida. So I think this is happening more and more all over. And people are not wasting their ammunition. They're not blinking just for the heck of it. They are sharpening their skills because I think they believe that there's no way this is going to get any better. I don't believe it's going to get any better. I was talking to a guy yesterday. I haven't talked to him for a few weeks, and we were just recounting what's happening. And I don't see any fixing this. Just because the president says I'd like it to be true that it's going to be over in a couple of weeks. Now they're saying that they're going to be rolling lockdowns for 18 months. Well, here on USA Prepares, from the very beginning of the corona panic, which is, we're in our 3rd month.
We were
from the very beginning.
2 or 3 years.
That's right. I said 2 years before there is a glimmer of it getting any better. And what I'm seeing is it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And the number of deaths in New York City is doubling every week. Now, how is it that New York City is doing so well in the race? How is New York number 1 in the race for pandemic infections and deaths? How is that possible? Well, there's a lot of wealth there. People fly in and fly out. And this is brought to you by your favorite airline. That's how we got this, because we didn't shut down the airlines, because the central government, the one in Washington, D.C., didn't know what it was doing. And we have a bunch of people who are paid by the highest bidder to do whatever the commerce that they want is. And because of that, we let this pandemic get out of control. Guineith, there are people who say this isn't even a pandemic. There are people who say this is a hoax. I mean, as recently as a few days ago, they said this is a hoax. Now, if they mean by that, it's being used to accomplish agendas, I would agree with that. But a hoax? No. People are dying. People are dying in mass. There's a nursing home.
Pastor you mentioned yesterday. On the show yesterday, you mentioned about a pastor, and he was going to have this meeting and believe God that everything was going to be okay. I'm all into believing God that everything's going to be okay. All right, by the way. But God told Noah to build an ark. Okay, God told Joseph to store up 7 years worth of grain. because there was a 7-year famine coming. And God prepared Moses for 80 years before he sent him back to the children of Israel to release them from Egypt. God is into making sensible preparation, okay? And God is into using your common sense, okay? If there is a massive disease outbreak, please don't have large gatherings of people. I think that the way that it is being imposed by the government from above is wrong. And I mentioned this in the email earlier, and I would like to go into that track for a little bit about stupid people.
Okay.
People,
Guineith, we have. Could you hold that? Could you hold that thought for a minute? We have David on the line, and I'd like to bring him on.
Okay.
Would that be okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, David. Welcome,
hey, how
David.
you doing?
You're on with Guineith. Let me just answer that question very succinctly, David. I was talking to Dr. Joel Wallach, and this was probably a couple of years ago, and I believe it was on the air. And I said, Dr. Wallach, now he'd done a lot of seminars in person telling people that they need to eat right, they need to avoid certain foods, they need to have vitamins, minerals, and supplements, or they're going to get sick. And they can do a lot better if they would just follow a couple simple directions. So I said to him, I was commiserating with him on the air, and I said, Dr. Wallach, how can you stand it? How can you stand being in front of people that have diabetes? All they have to do is change their diet, type 2 diabetes, they can fix it. How can you stand telling people that all they have to do is just change some simple things, and yet they won't listen to you? And I was commiserating kind of, they won't listen to us either. And he said very simply, Noah was pretty lonely too. So that's how I'm doing. People just don't get it. And Guineith said they're stupid, and I agree. So, David, how can we help you?
I agree.
David, I talked us right into the break. Can you stay with us?
Yeah, sure.
By the way, David, I think about you often. I really do. I would say at least.
I hope not bad.
Oh, no. Always good. Always good. And I have the highest respect for you. I truly do. David and Guineith and I will be right back after these few short commercial announcements. Guineith is with us live in Australia. David is joining us in Illinois. Welcome, David, and please let us know what's on your mind.
Okay. Well, since Gwen, I would like to hear another part of the planet to see if this is going on. I've been seeing reports on the news where they're deploying drones flying around in the cities and warning people to leave or move. Do you think? I'm wondering if, first of all, if they're doing that in Australia. The other thing I was going to ask about, do you think, given that power to them, they're going to stop that if this ever comes to a halt finally? You know what I'm saying?
I don't think they will. I think,
I don't.
Like I said, this is being excused. This is being used as an excuse to impose tyranny. Like Raul Emanuel once said, never let a good crisis go to waste. So, and I think that they probably generated this crisis in the first place for their own purposes, especially given the fact that Bill Gates and his mob had a simulation in October of last year for this very circumstance, and they all planned out how they were going to do it. And their response is pretty well mirroring what they, what they war-gamed last October is what is happening now. So, if you have an example, okay, of, this is just a hypothetical case. If you get two neighbours are having a dispute, right, and one of the neighbours comes across to the other neighbour's place and says, I hate you, I'm going to burn your house down in the middle of the night. Okay, let's say those two neighbours have got that dispute. And then, 3 nights later, the guy's house burns down. Who do you think would be the prime suspect?
Yeah.
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 That's exactly the situation that we're facing. They had a war game last October where they said, right, we hate humanity, we want to wipe out a large section of humanity, so let's all go and have a plague and wipe out a bunch of people. And then what do you know, probably about a month after that, all this began to kick off in China. And it was down to the details even of the plague first breaking out in Wuhan. That was the level of detail that they had in this simulation that they ran last October. And the videos are still all out there on the internet, and anyone can go and watch them. And it's quite spooky to, actually go and watch them because, it's so obvious, and the fact that Bill Gates had this very virus patented back in, 2015 or 2016 or something, and that now he's all jumping up and down and saying, oh, well, we must all be vaccinated and we've got to have a certificate of vaccination ID card, which happens to stand for COVID, COVID. And he said, oh, yeah, and everybody's going to have to get a tattoo so that we can keep a track of their vaccination records, even if there's a grid down situation, blah, 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 blah. And it's like Mark of the Beast. It's like out of Revelation 13. And I know this, Vincent, I grew up, my dad was a Catholic. He had a Catholic Bible, and I know that in the Catholic Bible, in the Jerusalem Bible, that book of the Bible that's called the Book of Revelation in most English translations, in the Jerusalem Bible, it's called the Book of the Apocalypse. Isn't that right?
I'm not sure about the names. Can I now? Are you close to Melbourne? I think is what they pronounced it.
Yeah, we live about. We live probably around about 200 or 250 miles from Melbourne.
Well, what I was going to ask about this is some of the stories and the people I've seen doing videos about the news. They were showing where they have the Chinese students and workers, even in here in America. There's some videos about them doing this in America. When it started over there, they must have knew something was going on because people that were over here, like college students and visa workers, they were buying up all kinds of this supplies and sending it back to China. And they showed it even happening there where you are.
Here. Yeah, they were. They were definitely doing that here. The supply chain situation here in Australia is probably as dire or even a bit more dire than it is in the United States, because I'll tell you what's going on. They had to make people only use the supermarkets in their local area because people were travelling from Melbourne to towns like Ballarat and Bendigo, which are like 2 hours drive away, to get their groceries. And then some of them were even going to small country towns with small country town supermarkets where they've got a population of maybe 500 or 1,500 people and one supermarket in the whole town. And, it might be a little 4-aisle supermarket, and there's somebody coming all the way from Melbourne
and wipe them out.
Grocery shopping.
Yeah, hold that thought. Hold that thought. David, please stay with us. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Got 22s? Got shepherds? Here we go. Hour number 2. USA prepares. Guineith, you were mentioning to David people traveling from a larger city to a small rural town, and I believe what you were saying is they are wiping out. The invaders from the big city are wiping out the inventory at the small city, at the small town stores. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is not necessarily even just Chinese people. This is regular citizens of the bigger towns and bigger cities, because what I'm guessing is that there's the inventory in their hometown or their home city is getting so thin that they just need supplies, and they have the money to travel to these more rural locations to go to the supermarkets and get supplies, and this is what they're doing. And I have a friend who lives in Geraldton in West Australia. I used to live in Geraldton in Western Australia, and my friend was telling me that there were people travelling all the way from Perth in Western Australia, which is about 300 kilometres, to go to Geraldton, to go to supermarkets in Geraldton to do the grocery shopping. So they're travelling 200 miles or thereabouts, and it's not just 200 miles through, like nice, pleasant country drive and all that sort of thing. It's basically most of that drive is desert. And I've made that drive myself many times from Geraldton to Perth and from Perth to Geraldton, and been on the bus as well during that journey. And there's basically nothing really between Geraldton and Perth. And that's the drive that people are making. And it got to the point where the Geraldton police actually had to put up roadblocks between Perth and Geraldton to cut Geraldton off from Perth and stop people from coming through from Perth to Geraldton, because that's what the Geraldton people were asking for, because there's really nowhere else for them to get their supplies. There is no other town that they can just, hop across to the next town and get it. There's like desert for 150 miles all around Geraldton. There's nothing there.
Guineith, when these people from the big city come to the rural part of Australia, they are recognized from hundreds of feet away. The local villagers can see, those are those city slickers.
Absolutely.
And I believe that the villagers resent these invaders coming in and scooping up supplies from their little towns, and are not going to forget this. And it's going to cause an uprising, in my opinion. Do you think so too, or is it just my imagination?
Yeah, I don't think the Geraldton. I'm using Geraldton and Perth as an example, but you could just as easily go, Melbourne and Bendigo. Same thing has been happening, and they've got a saying here in country Victoria, I don't know, and also Australia in general, that you can recognise where somebody comes from by the colour of dirt on their car or the level of dirt on their car. City people have clean cars. Country people don't have clean cars.
Yeah.
Especially in an arid climate. Because as soon as you drive out of your driveway, you're going to either get dust blowing onto your car and sticking onto the paintwork, or you are going to get mud splashing as you drive through a puddle, and the puddle might go all the way up to the axles. These are not little puddles. And, I'm pretty sure they might have a similar saying around where you are, Vincent. I don't think it's just us. But country people can tell where you're from by the colour of dirt on your car, and that's not even a joke. That's true.
No, that's absolutely correct. The vehicles around here, the locals have like a rust-colored dirt on them from the rust-colored roads, and kind of reddish-colored, reddish-brown dirt. And so the vehicles have that on them. And when I was hauling hay with our son, I guess around 10 days ago, and we made a point-to-point trip to haul hay that was ours back to the farm from another field, we saw some vehicles that looked really out of place. New vehicles, those big pushed-out, superstructured pickup trucks, the $65,000 types, and they looked really out of place. Yeah, they looked out of place, compared to my old, jalopy and everyone else's jalopy around here. So the locals, you know, are going to be able to tell. And I got to tell you that anybody showing up in a brand new pickup truck is going to look out of place and is going to be not welcome here. Just on the first visual of what they drive, because they just got here to invade us because of this pandemic. It was okay to rip us off on Wall Street. That's okay. But when they, you know, they've been taking advantage of the little people for a long time, and now it's not going to work. And I think Lucille's going to come out. I think the shooting's going to start. I'm not advocating it, but I can really see it coming. David, does this sound reasonable to you, or does this sound foreign, what I'm saying?
No, I agree with you. And obviously our government must be concerned because I don't know if you heard about this yet, but the Senate and Elizabeth Warren, actually, she was the Senate that did it, but in Congress, they're already trying to add gun bills into the next stimulus package. And they were reading some of them online, and it was late last night, and I didn't, but I'm going to look at it again. So they're already trying to, you know, take that stuff away, which they kind of always have, but usually it's the local states, but the federal government's trying to. So they must be they must know they're going to be a big problem when the outcome of this, you know, falls.
Yeah, that's when the shooting will start for real. David, I have a question for you. Someone suggested that I listen to some talk radio, and I tuned in for a real short time, and I believe I heard last week, or within the last week, a host say that the coronavirus is a hoax. Did you hear anything like that, or is it?
Not only is it a hoax, they said they're crisis actors. That was what I heard last night. It was crisis. And I was like, oh, gosh, I got to find another thing to listen to. But it didn't get better. I listened to somebody else, and that guy, he said this is the most boring crisis he's ever had to deal with. He wishes he had a more exciting crisis. And people did not take that well at all because people are dying. And they're saying it's fake. They're all crisis actors. That was the thing I wanted to ask you, Gwyneth, also, since you're way over yonder way. Do you know anybody that's been sick, or know anybody that works in a hospital environment or a medical environment that does know and this is true?
I have a friend who lives locally, okay, and my friend has a lot of friends and relatives who live in Spain and Italy. And, you know, she's from a reasonably prosperous family, and she's traveled all over the world. She has friends all over the world, and especially her friends and family members tend to be in that part of the world, of Italy and Spain, and a lot of them work in the hospital system, and she says that they're going crazy over there. They've never seen anything like it. And there's somebody else that I know of that said they had somebody who was working in the hospital system. I'm not sure what part of the world, but they said that once again they have never seen anything like this disease. This is a really, really strange sickness because I think that in some parts of the world, the numbers are not as high as what they are expecting them to be, okay? And I don't quite know why that is, but in other parts of the world, it's devastating people. It's devastating whole populations. For example, you know, trying to get accurate numbers out of the Chinese government is a lost cause. But what we do know is that in the 3 months from, January, February, March of this year, you had 21 million mobile phone accounts in Wuhan and Hubei that were deactivated because they hadn't made any calls in a month. And apparently in that part of the world, they've got a certain phone plan where as long as you make one call a month, the phone stays active. But if you don't, then the number is deactivated. Okay? And there were 21 million of this specific kind of cell phone accounts that became inactive in the first 3 months of this year in Wuhan and Hubei province in China.
Right,
and that is something that would be very difficult to fake.
Right. Now, what I was going to add to that is their cell phones are linked to them with a QR code like our Social Security numbers are to us. So everything they do goes through that number in that phone.
That's right.
And they can't even go into certain places if their code is green, then that means they can go. If it's red, that means they've been around somebody infected. But they do that for everything is tied to that person's phone.
That's right. So for 21 million phone accounts in Wuhan and Hubei to drop off the radar and say, okay, well, this phone is now inactive, something happened there. And I would say it's probably the coronavirus. And I would say probably the thing that is activating this coronavirus is the 5G. But that's my guess, okay? It's an educated guess, and it's a guess that's based on a certain amount of data. But I would say that the things that apparently trigger it, the virus that is, poor nutrition, especially lack of vitamin D and vitamin C and zinc and vitamin K and vitamin B. Okay? So poor nutrition and high radiation levels, whether it's nuclear radiation or electromagnetic radiation, it doesn't seem to matter, especially in that 9,600 hertz band.
Right, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. We'll be right back.
9.6 gigahertz band.
Guineith Isaacs is with us in Australia. David is with us in Illinois. And I'm here in Missouri. And I just got off the phone during the break, not on the air. It was a conversation that I had with one of our instructors. I picked up the phone during the break, and I called based on David's question. And the question was something like, do you know anybody who has the coronavirus? Well, I remember talking with one of our instructors off the air. And our instructor said that 3 of her students, she's a teacher, 3 of her students have the coronavirus. Not someone in the family, not someone that one of her students or 3 of her students know or knows, but 3 of her students have the coronavirus. So I picked up the phone and I called her just now. And I asked her the specifics, or a little bit more of the specifics. 2 of the students have it, are in their 20s. So they're 20-something years old. And, of course, we all know that you don't get it if you're young and healthy, right? Well, 2 young and healthy students of hers have it, and 1 is in her 40s, and she has it as well. So, David, does that shed a little bit of light on your question? Do we know anybody who has it? Yeah, I mean, because, like I said, I don't understand how some of these other radio individuals can claim that these are all crisis actors. I mean, our government can't get certain simple things right. You think they could cooperate around the world and do all this with so many people? I mean, that's crazy. David, I'm with you. I am absolutely with you. The ability to get the heads of state of most of the countries around the world to agree on this charade would be impossible, because they know, they all know that if they pulled a charade like this and they got us all locked down and we lost our jobs, we lost our cars, we lost our homes, and became destitute, that when we figured this out, Lucille would come out There would be a run on baseball bats. There would be a run on anything that could fly through the air that could be used to take these people out. There would be a run on it, and there would be massive deaths of the elite and the heads of state. They know that. So they would never agree to perpetrate a fraud this big. They would never agree, in my opinion. Now, are there people who are using this to their advantage? Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, if you can manipulate a crisis to your own advantage, that's what these people do. I mean, J.P. Morgan, that's what he did during the first Great Depression. He let rumors fly so that he could make a fortune in the Depression when the stock market crashed. That's what he did. And there are people who go, and I've been trying to find a name that would be acceptable to describe these people, the common thread. And there's certain words I can't use. And if I use those words, I'd be thrown off the air. But I think I can use the word that they worship at the church of money. I think I can use that to describe these people. Bill Gates is one of those people who worships at the church of money. Because if he really believed that he could help people instead of have people die, he would give away some of that money that he can't even count, it's so big, and help people prevent them from losing their homes. Okay? He would have reduced the price of Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Office and Microsoft Works and Microsoft whatever. He would have reduced the price. But he didn't. He didn't. Now, he was the CEO and chairman, so he could have done all those things. He could have said, hey, y'all, listen, I just had a change of heart. We're not going to take advantage of our customers anymore. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to lower the price because we don't need any more money. But he didn't do that. And Apple could have done the same thing. So I think a lot of these people, like the heads of the banks, the international, let's call them investment bankers. I think they could have done the same thing. They could have said, you know what, we're not going to throw people out of their homes. We're going to let them keep their cars. We're going to lower the interest rate. And the captains of industry could have done the same thing. We don't need to have cars that cost $40,000, pickup trucks that cost $65,000. We don't need that. It never should have happened, but it did because they're greedy. And how much does a ticket to Disney? Is it over $100? I guess it is, right? Why? Why is it over $100? Why isn't it $5? Class, I just want to tell you, when I hear people say that this is a hoax, it absolutely frosts me, and it makes me angry. And I don't want to be affiliated with anyone who says that. I've lost a bunch of friends over this corona panic because they're sick and tired of hearing, their words, sick and tired of hearing about the coronavirus. Really? This is the plague. This is leprosy. This is the Spanish influenza. This is the big one. This is the takedown. And they're sick and tired of hearing it. I can't believe it. Anyway, just to give you a little bit more information about how real this is, the U.S. Navy has said that the Navy aircraft carrier, the Theodore Roosevelt, it has a crew of 4,000. 600 of the 4,000 are infected with the coronavirus. Our economic system requires continuous growth. Without continuous growth, our economic system here in the United States will collapse. There cannot be growth in the corona panic. It cannot happen. The economic system will and is collapsing right now. So what do? Well, get food right now, but don't buy meat. Don't buy fresh meat because the processing plants have been infected. Pork, chicken, and beef, the big ones, have been infected. And the workers have been going to work sick. Now, I believe that the management is saying, yeah, I'll just come to work anyway. I believe that. I can't prove that. That's just my thought, my opinion. So what do? So get your food, get your staples, get your pasta sauce, your beans, your corn, your rice, flour, if you can find any, yeast if you can find some. I mean, yeast and flour are unobtainium. They're that rare. Okay, and seed companies right now. Don't go to the store. Get it, buy it online, have it shipped, and leave it out in the sun for hours. Okay, when you get your packages, wear gloves and respirator mask, and so forth, and then wash the clothes that you touch, and then thoroughly take a shower as soon as you touch them, leave them out in the sun and let them be disinfected. I'm talking about the pasta and the jars and the cans and so forth. Have it delivered. But don't, and then throw out the outer packaging. Seed companies have temporarily shut down. Why? Because they're overwhelmed. Seed companies are overwhelmed. So they've shut down so they can handle the backlog. Now, White Harvest Seed is I know Mike Knox and I know his family. They're down the road from us, about 20 miles or so. And he's a USAP Instructor. His company's called whiteharvestseed.com. Whiteharvestseed.com. And you can go there. This is not a commercial. This is an endorsement. If you still need seeds, you can get them from White Harvest Seed. And here is the discount if you happen to get them on the internet. WHSC, like White Harvest Seed Company 15, and they'll give you 15% off your order. Or you can call them. The telephone number is on the website, White Harvest Seed. This is that's not a commercial. They're not paying me. I called them and asked them if they had seeds and they could sell them to you, and they said they do. So if you want seeds, and start your garden right now, because I don't know where your greens are going to come from unless you sprout them, but you're still going to have to buy the seeds to sprout. Guineith, any comments?
Yeah, I think I mentioned about my food supplies. What I'm doing here is I don't plan on living on those food supplies forever, and I'm basically getting enough food together to last until we can really get our vegetable patch happening to where we can produce almost all of our own food. And so that's what we're planning here, and I would advise other people to do likewise. And and also we have here in Australia they call them dams, but what they really are is some ponds. And we've got a large farm pond which is full of crayfish. And and we have this has been one thing where I did get caught out. We have a chicken, and she's been a real survivor, and she's quite a good mother. But I went to get other chickens last week, and they have become unobtainable layer hens. Even quite young chicks have become quite rare. And so I'm kind of kicking myself there, but nobody can do everything perfectly. But yeah, it's going to be something where, we will get through. But, for people there that have made no preparation, and the vegetable garden is actually starting to produce quite nicely around our place. And I also know how to, I also wildcraft wild edibles, and I sort of semi-cultivate certain wild edible plants that I know actually taste really good. And so, I've got a hold of a bunch of propagation stock of this particular plant, and I just planted it all over the place, and I've been propagating it out for the last few years. And I anticipate in about the next 6 months that it will be growing at a level where it will be able to supply us as a staple food, even if everything else fails. But, I've been doing this for years. I live in a harsh climate, and it's taken me years to figure out how to do it, And you've got to realize that if you are planning to, just go on a piece of land and then you're gonna put in a vegetable garden and it's all going to be okay, I can almost guarantee that you'll lose most of the first crop of vegetables. I can almost guarantee it, because it's going to take probably around about 2 months for every pest species in the district to find your vegetable patch, and once they do, they will wipe it out. And that's everything from slugs and grubs and caterpillars to the local deer. that, and everything in between. And it's, if you're committed to the organic, then you're just going to have to sit there and watch it get destroyed and then replant. And I can almost guarantee that by the time you replant the second crop, then, the predator population will have built up to the level where the critters that are preying on your lettuces and cabbages, they won't be such a problem anymore. And that's one thing I noticed here. For the first few years, actually, it was nothing but slugs and caterpillars. Now, every time I go out, I see skinks and geckos in the garden. And it's obvious that the skinks and geckos have found the local caterpillar and slug and snail population, and they've moved in, and I'm happy to have them stay. But as you see, my knowledge of ecology that taught me that, but it was really, really hard for, like I said, the first few years actually, to just sit there and watch my vegetables get eaten out constantly, and me trying to go in there and just squash and drown slugs and caterpillars at every spare moment. It was not pleasant. If people think that they're just going to go, especially if they live in somewhere like, I don't know, Phoenix or Reno or Arizona or somewhere like that has a bit of a desert-type climate, if they think that they're just going to be able to move in and then plant vegetables and it's all going to be okay, they have got another thing coming. They had better start practicing growing vegetables where they are and at least get some learning and at least get some vegetables happening in case they're caught and they have to spit it out in the suburban area where they are. Or better still, they'd better move to their country block or estate or ranch or whatever it is they have now and begin learning how to farm and garden there, because there's another thing I can guarantee you. Just because you know how to raise vegetables in the suburbs, you think you're going to be able to go out in a rural area and grow vegetables in that rural area, you have got another thing coming, because you're not going to be able to do it. Because, every landscape for growing vegetables is different. Their soil chemistry is different, okay? The biology of the soil is different. The pest and disease structure is different. The rainfall's different. The frost patterns are different. The heat patterns, the rainfall patterns are different. Everything's different in every single location. And just because you know how to grow vegetables in one location doesn't guarantee that you'll be immediately successful if you move to a new place. Does that make sense, Vincent?
It absolutely does. And so here's a couple tips, class. Number one, if you're going to plant a garden, plant it as if your life is going to depend on it, because it is. So don't put it in that far corner of your property. So if you have an acre, don't put it in that corner where it's out of the way. Put it really close to the kitchen door, okay, because you're going to be going in and out. You're going to be paying attention to it. You're going to be watering it. Now, do you have fertilizer? We recommended for months. Get fertilizer. Get it now. You can still get fertilizer. People haven't figured out that not only do they need seeds, but they need fertilizer. Now, it would be better to do it organically. But if you don't have a horse, and you don't have cows, and you don't have chicken manure, what are you going to use? So get some fertilizer. Now, the best bang for the buck in most cases is going to be triple 13. That's 13-13-13. It's about $10 for 40 pounds. And the 13 stands for 13% nitrogen, 13% phosphorus, and 13% potassium. It's also known as NPK, nitrogen, N, P, phosphorus, K, potassium. So you can get 5-10-5, but it does not have the percentages of the elements that are needed, like the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potassium. So the higher those numbers, the more effective that fertilizer is going to be. So if you take 13-13-13 and you figure out what's the rest of what's in that bag, that'd be filler. Filler. So 5-10-5 would be 5 plus 10 plus 5. That's 20. That means 20% fertilizer and 80% filler. So you want the highest numbers that you can get. Typically 13, 13, 13 is going to be your best bang for the buck. It comes in a plastic bag. You can store it for years. And that'd be wonderful if you could store it for years. But I have a feeling you're going to need it right away to get that garden growing quickly. And the CDC has just come up with something really interesting. Well, and this just shows you how far behind government and corporations are from us. They figured out that ultraviolet light is something that can work against the coronavirus. Can you imagine that? Those guys are so bright. We've been telling our class for a long time. Who knew? Yep. Can you imagine? Praise the Lord. What would we do without the CDC and government telling us about what we should do? So, ultraviolet light, see, but don't look at it because it will blind you. Do not look at it, okay? But it will disinfect the coronavirus, according to my research. We'll be right back. Okay, class, so what do you do? Well, number one is food. You've got to have food. And I can tell you one thing that you can do. You can sign up with the Chinese factory outlet. And they are not gouging people yet. And they have an app. You can go on the internet. You can use your smartphone if you have one. And you can sign up and register and pay with your credit card. And you can pick from the things that you'd like. And you can put them in your cart. And they'll give you a time that you can show up. And when you show up at the store, there will be numbers. And you can pull up to that number. And then you text them with your phone and you say, I'm at number 18 or whatever your number might be. And they will bring your order out to you and put it in your trunk. You don't have to talk to them. You just tell them that you're in a, whatever you're driving, a white Chevy pickup truck or whatever. So that's a thought. And do we still have David in Illinois? I had a question for David. Okay. Okay. Gwen, yes. Guineith, yes, any comments? Okay. So I'm sorry that we lost you. I'm sorry that we lost you. It looks like we have a really long delay now.
I think you were talking about people's vehicles getting loaded up at the grocery store.
Right. And that's one thing you can do rather than go into the store.
Yeah. But then you
and I recommend that. I recommend not going.
Yeah. You still have to deal with the fact that the employees of the grocery store might have this virus. So there's really no getting away.
Absolutely.
There's really no getting around it. And the only thing that I could say, okay, yes, pray to God. Absolutely pray to God. But on this physical level, make sure you keep a good supply of Indian tonic water that contains quinine, but not aspartame, okay, and also zinc tablets, okay. And I have this is not an advertisement. This is just what I'm doing. I have Blackmore's Bio Zinc, okay, and it's 125 milligrams. And my son Theo and I are taking one of those tablets a day with a glass of quinine, which is, the Indian tonic water. And, there's two of these glasses of Indian tonic water a day, which is really just one glass divided in two. And the other half of the glass, this is a wine glass, is topped up with prickly pear wine or prickly pear juice. Okay, so it's prickly pear juice that's been left to ferment for a bit. And the thing about prickly pear juice is it's a wonderful tonic all on its own. It's absolutely packed with flavonoids and it's absolutely packed with vitamin C. And, it's really something that is so beneficial. And it actually has more vitamin C in it than lemon juice. So that is quite a power pack to knock out any sort of cold virus or flu virus or anything like that. And so I believe that this is given to us by God, given to all of us by God. Indian tonic water. It contains quinine and zinc and a good source of vitamin C. And if you take that twice or three times a day, that should keep you safe. But only one
and
tablet.
For those of you in the for those of you in the United States,
2 or 3 glasses of
she's
zinc,
talking
but only
about.
one zinc. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, we've got a really long delay, over 2 seconds, Guineith, from me to Minnesota, so it's probably a 5-second delay. That's why we're stepping on each other. But class, she's referring to quinine water. We would call that quinine, and she pronounces it a little bit differently in Australia. Robert in Kansas, welcome.
Good morning, Vincent. I was curious, did you hear about China growing potatoes on the moon? And do you think that affects the outcome of those potatoes, how they grow?
Robert, you come out of left field almost all the time. No, I did not hear about the Chinese growing potatoes on the moon, but you would think that it would have an effect because the gravitational difference of the moon being 1/6 that of Earth, right? So, first they got to get there, right? And are they walking around there, or are they doing this robotically?
They're growing potatoes on the moon, dude.
Yeah, and are they going to bring them back through the Van Allen radiation belt? That's a discussion for another time, Robert. But thank you for your call.
Bye.
Guineith, thank you for being with us and spending your night with us here at USA Prepares.